How's everybody doing today? So in the interest of getting this video out quickly, because this is a ever updating, ever changing situation, this video is going to get minimal editing, just what I feel is absolutely necessary. I'm going to ask that she turn it around in like an hour or less. But I think it's important to get this story out as quickly as we can. So I want to talk a little bit about the issues surrounding the disappearance and likely, almost definitely at this point, death of Saudi Arabian journalist Jamal Kashoggi. Now, for those of you who don't know, he came of his own volition recently to the Saudi embassy in Turkey, where he had been living as he had fled from Saudi Arabia. Jamal Kashoggi had at one time been an insider with the Saudi royal family, but had since become a critic, and as some of you who may be more familiar with Saudi Arabia and its government may know, this made him feel threatened, like he was a target, and he then proceeded to flee the country. Now, he had been acting as a contributor to the Washington Post, but in the past he had also been a contributor to Al Jazeera, Al Watan, the Saudi Gazette, and a number of other publications. So recently he had come to the Saudi embassy. I don't remember the exact details of why he had come there. It had something to do with wanting to file for divorce from his wife in Saudi Arabia in order to pursue a new marriage in Turkey. Now, after entering the building, all evidence points to the fact that he never left. Surveillance of the building shows him going in and never showed him coming out. Obviously, a lot of people instantaneously threw blame on the Saudi government that this was an attempt to either illegally extradite him to Saudi Arabia or to just outright eliminate him. From that point forward, a lot of accusations began to spread. A lot of countries began to get involved. Threats were leveled against the Saudi government by the United States of America, Germany, France, and other major nations. And at this point, Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia and acting regent, was put in a bit of a situation. From this point forward, I'm going to get into a little bit of speculation mixed with breaking reports that have not been confirmed. Everything prior to this point is things that we know for certain. Everything from here on out is either breaking news that hasn't been corroborated or my personal analysis. Understand that. So recently, stories have begun to surface, be leaked from supposed insiders that Saudi Arabia is preparing a report confessing that the death of Khashoggi did happen in the embassy, but that it allegedly happened as an accident or as the result of an interrogation that was not sanctioned by the government. In other words, there were rogue actors within the Saudi embassy. It's likely that people like this were the ones who were behind the interrogation that led to Khashoggi's death. Whether or not it was accidental, I don't know, but it seems like that is what the leaks are saying that the report from Saudi Arabia is going to be claiming. Now, from my personal opinion, Crown Prince bin Salman has no option here. He's backed into a corner. He has to release this report. He then has to take the two individuals and likely turn them over to the United States of America or Turkey or France or another one of these other nations for their actions, which will then have to be condemned by the Saudi government. It is likely that the people selected for this role will go along with it for any one of a multitude of reasons. These people will then likely be jailed indefinitely or executed either by Saudi Arabia or by the international community demanding that they take control of the situation. This is the only play that the Saudi government has. Assuming that that either the Saudi crown themselves or high-ranking members of the council are somehow aware of this situation, were aware of it going in, and did in fact likely order it, even if they didn't do it outright, even if it was more of one of those situations where, gosh, it would certainly be pretty convenient for the crown if something were to happen to Mr. Khashoggi when he entered the embassy on this day. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Either way, they obviously can't come out and say that. Obviously, the government has to do whatever they can to distance themselves from this. And the reality of the situation is that because of the strategic value of Saudi Arabia as an ally to the United States in the Middle East, because of the fact that with all the other turmoil going on there, our operations in the Middle East, militarily, financially, and otherwise, kind of hinge on Saudi Arabia. I think that this is one of those situations where it's necessary that we give them an out. Maybe it's not the morally correct thing to do, but for the sake of the greater good, I guess you would say, it's one of those things, especially because there would be no way to ever prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the government was behind this attack. Likely it's going to come down to a situation where we all are relatively sure somebody high up in the government probably ordered this attack, but there's going to be somebody else scapegoated that is lower down. This report that is going to come out, according to the leaks that have been received by CNN and other platforms, is going to put this blame on rogue actors. And I think that has a lot to do with President Trump's statement that he released after talking to the Crown Prince, that maybe he was the victim of rogue killers. I think that was President Trump kind of setting up this out for Saudi Arabia. Like, well, obviously this happened on your doorstep, Saudi Arabia. Obviously somebody in your embassy is to blame here. But maybe, just maybe, they did it without your permission, right? And Saudi Arabia kind of has no choice but to say, yeah, it was without our permission. They'll probably still have to face some sort of, at least a symbolic reprimand. Probably they will be forced to minimize or completely remove their embassy staff from Turkey, and maybe some other Western nations will follow suit and say, all right, we want half your ambassadors out of our country, or something like that. There is some precedent to that in recent tensions between the Russia and the United States of America around the time of the Crimea tensions. There may be some symbolic sanction or reprimand issued against them, but it will all be under the guise of, this is your punishment for allowing these people that worked for you to disobey you and kill this man. There won't ever be any official blame or punishment on Saudi Arabia. And here's the reason. Straightforward, let me be really honest with you, because some people might be taking me right now as saying this as, I think that we should just look the other way when somebody was killed in probably a horrible way. And the reality of the situation is this. If we were to force Saudi Arabia's hand, if we were to refuse the explanation that the individuals who led to the death of Mr. Khashoggi were acting on their own behalf and not on behalf of the Saudi Arabian government, then we need to then escalate the situation and follow through with our earlier threats. Saudi Arabia will not take kindly to this. Bin Salman has been working very hard to improve Saudi Arabia's image and improve their dealings with the Western world. However, he is still the crown prince of a family with absolute power in their country, and he will not take kindly to any sort of aggression from these Western nations. Conflict will ensue. Whether or not it will be direct conflict, I don't know, because Saudi Arabia, while dangerous to other countries in the Middle East, is not particularly a threat to the likes of the United States of America or Germany or France. If it were to come to an all-out conflict, they may pose a bit of a risk to Turkey due to proximity and the somewhat relative power between the two. But again, even then, Turkey would be supported by the United States and the other Western nations. Either way, though, you run the risk of an all-out war if you force Saudi Arabia's hand here. There is the possibility that the Crown Prince even factored for this beforehand, or whoever was ultimately behind this factored for this beforehand, and is well aware that the Western nations kind of have to give Saudi Arabia the out here. The only kind of silver lining I can give you guys is that at least either way, the people who actually committed the act will probably face punishment, even if those higher up the ladder who may have ordered it from the shadows will not. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about that, guys. Have a great night. I'll see you in the next video. Like and subscribe, comment, let me know what you think of all this. Like I said, this is an ongoing story. I'm going to get this video up as soon as I can, but allow for the possibility that there may even be updates by the time I get this video up. Have a great night, and peace.